Okay, we are now live here. Bob, up to you.
Great, thanks. Welcome to our second webinar of the Value Department, hosted by Katharina Schoendorf and myself. We're thrilled to have you join for a special conversation with Daniel Trabucci and Tommaso Buganza, the authors of their new book, The Digital Phoenix Effect. Daniel Trabucci, Associate Professor at the School of Management of Politecnico di Milano and Research Lead at the Leading Lab, and Tommaso Buganza, full professor of Leadership and Innovation at the same institution and co-founder of the Leading Lab. Both are recognized thought leaders in digital transformation and innovation. Their research and teaching has shaped how organizations approach platform thinking and navigate the challenges of digital change. Today, we dive deep into the heart of the digital Phoenix effect. The book explores how organizations can rise stronger from digital disruption, turning challenges into opportunities for renewal and growth. Daniel and Tommaso draw on years of research, real-world case studies, and the work with companies undergoing transformation to reveal the patterns and mindsets that enable true digital resilience.
And I must say, we're talking about this book, and at the Value Department, all future-proof business models we work on, including circular ones, by the way, are platform and ecosystem-based by design. And because our network brings decades of experience in helping incumbents shift towards platform and ecosystem thinking, we're very delighted to host today, or to have also this conversation with you, Daniel and Tommaso. That is fantastic. So a quick note on the format. We will start with a series of questions for the authors over the next 35 minutes. And if you have questions during the session, please, in the LinkedIn post, in the comments, share or post your question there. And we'll make sure to reserve some time at the end to address your question and give Daniel and Tommaso the opportunity to respond directly. So, Bob, back to you.
Thank you. Well, Daniel and Tommaso's insights perfectly complement the mission that the Value Department has, and Katharina shortly discussed about or mentioned, going beyond isolated success stories and to cover broader lessons and practical strategies that any organization can use to ignite its own Phoenix effect. So to begin our conversation and set the stage of what is ahead, Daniel, Tommaso, what made you decide to write the digital Phoenix effect after actually the first book, Platform Thinking? What was there a turning point?
Well, first of all, thank you, Bob. Thank you, Katharina, for having us, for inviting us in this webinar, and for supporting our project at large. So you said it right. 2 years ago, we published our first book. We said it wouldn't have been the last one. Actually, we have planned for 7, but still, there is a The goal is Harry Potter-like series. Well, joking apart, the reason why is pretty clear. In the first book, we talked about platforms trying to highlight the main features, the main characteristics that make platforms something worth to be studied, something worth to be noted as different from traditional companies, from linear value chain businesses, from the usual companies the vast majority of us worked or is working for. And we divided that book in this reading the past and writing the future, so trying to understand how these digital great companies actually work behind the surface that as users we all see. And we dedicated the second part of the book giving tools that could be used by established companies to apply those mechanisms within their boundaries. Reality is that book was not talking about legacy firms. It was talking about startups and was suggesting a way to legacy firms to learn something from them and to make innovation out of it. The second book is all about legacy firms. So this book is all about stories, problems, cases that comes from legacy firms. We open with 3 stories, Siemens, AXA, and any. And we continue with the 5 problems that legacy firms can solve through platform thinking. So we kind of change completely the narrative. There is still a chapter there that is saying what platforms are, how they work, and so on and so forth. So you can also start reading the second one without having read the first one. But we wrote it because it is based on a completely different perspective. It's not just a possibility, but is, we hope, a clear explanation of how legacy firms can use platforms to foster innovation, and a bit of why they should.
And and let's say also something or add something to it. When you published your first book, you also started, discovering and playing and adjusting ChatGPT, AI, and to see how you could feed it. So, and you continue also with the help of this book and with your work, also with your clients, also to continue and to work with AI, but also to see how your tool can become better. Because this is something which is absolutely new when helping also legacy firms or incumbents when they change. The transformation is that they don't have only you as a person, they have also the book and they have ChatGPT, right?
Yes, so that's absolutely right. The idea, you're right also when you say that we started with the first book and we were experimenting a little bit with generative AI. And now actually we are deep into a research about generative AI and platforms. So what is in the book, in the second book, is in the middle of the road, meaning that we come from a sort of legacy connected to design, because Politecnico di Milano is a Politecnico, meaning that we got architecture, engineering, and design. And what we wanted to do with this second book was to really put in the hands of managers into legacy companies actual tools that they can use from day one in order to start thinking and designing their own platforms. And so there are 2 things that we did actually. The first one was that we developed a card set. So it's like a game of cards. And you can, so cards are all different. Daniel is showing them. Cards are all different, meaning that there are 4 typologies of cards. Every single step of the process is starting with a question, so a triggering question. Then you got cards showing you possible alternatives, what other companies did, what are all the possible things you can do. There are some other cards helping you creating some tools. And then finally, there is a milestone card, just to be sure that you answered properly the question before you move on. So this is what we tried to do in order to help companies. And then we also did what you, Catherine, were talking about. So we trained our own GPT in order to be fully trained on our process. And the GPT is for us, we think it's interesting because it is not trained to give you any answer. It is trained to ask you questions. So it is trained to drive you through the process and is asking questions to you. Of course, you can ask questions, but the GPT will never tell you, do this or do that. What the GPT can do is giving you suggestions about what other companies did. So, for example, we put into the database of the GPT all the 140 cases that we studied. And so you might ask the GPT, is there anybody who did any data strategy platform on, in healthcare industry? And the GPT will find something might be yes, might be no, but you got, another thing in the healthcare company or another, data strategy in a similar environment and so on. So to make a long story short, we are experimenting, but probably the most interesting thing that we are experimenting with is that we do not accept the idea that a generative AI can do innovation. Knowing how it is coded, we know that basically cannot really create something completely new. It's only human beings who can be really and truly innovative. So instead of having the GPT as a way to suggest you innovation, we trained the GPT to be your super powerful assistant in doing innovation. So we always make this kind of metaphor. So it's like the Iron Man. So with the GPT, you are the Iron Man, but still you. So it's not doing everything alone. It is you that now are more powerful because you got all the examples, all the theory, all the process. So everything is there, and every moment you stop in the process, the GPT is there to help you to go on. But it's all on you. It's all on managers.
Fantastic, fantastic. And this leads me to my question, because on the subtitle of your book is How Legacy Companies Can Lead the Platform Revolution Without Burning Everything Down. And that is really important, and which leads me to my question. Should legacy companies or incumbents or traditional firms go all in on a platform play, or is it smarter to move step by step? Where is the sweet spot for them?
Well, this is a good question, Catherine, because we change our answer over time.
Mm-hmm.
At first, when we start thinking about platform thinking as a strategy to foster innovation for established firms, we actually thought about companies changing their business model towards platforms. The case we had in mind was Telepass, the Italian company that is managing the tolling system in the highway, that actually created this Telepass Pay, which is a mobility ecosystem that is getting together the chance to pay the parking lot, the ski pass, and many other things. Obviously, in the first place, it was not changing the business model, so they were still making money out of paying of letting people paying the toll. But potentially, that was a turning moment that could set the future of the company. And for a bunch of years, we actually looked for cases that were doing something similar. And we looked for companies that were willing to do something similar. But I'll be honest, for a bunch of years, we haven't found a lot of cases. We found few cases in those directions, but very few of them. Till we made this gigantic, let me say, research that is then presented within the book. We took the Standard & Poor's 500 companies. We removed the companies that were, how can I say, platform native, so Meta, Apple, and those guys. And we look for platform-related initiatives for all of them. We end up with a huge data set. We found out that many of them are not actual platforms, which means that they are digital services without two sides, two sets of customers, and without real network effects. And we found that many of those cases are actually not working at a business model level, but are working on the extension of the product that the company is bringing towards the customers, or are even working at the process level. We opened the book with OpenS by Eni. Eni is an energy company in Italy, one of the biggest energy companies in the world, for sure in Italy, that is working in the energy supply chain. They develop a platform to support their suppliers towards the sustainable transformation by helping them to meet other companies that help companies in becoming more sustainable. This has nothing to do with how the company makes money. It has nothing to do directly with the final product that the company is bringing on the market. This is process innovation. This is a procurement problem, but still platform thinking can be the solution. So my answer today to your question is absolutely no, don't go all in. It's a change of paradigm. It's a change in how you create value, and it is basically going against how you were used to create value. So start with a project that is relevant to you, but get custom with that, get comfortable with that. Try small, be agile in a way.
Right. So it's really about creating value, as you say, Daniel. And I also understood from Tommaso, you have the cards, you have the ChatGPT. that already raises questions and helps you on the journey. But how can legacy firms actually foster platform thinking? Is there another way?
Okay, I think this is one of the most relevant questions, because we are we ask it ourselves, this question a lot of times. And so we are not sure we got the full answer. We got at least part of the answer. So the first thing is that
Tommaso,
I guess we are losing him. Well, I can jump in. I'm not sure I'm going to give the same answer he was going.
Sorry.
He was going to give.
Okay,
Okay,
I'm back.
there you are. I was jumping in. We lost you.
I'm very sorry. Can you hear me now?
yes.
Now, yes. Please go
Okay,
ahead.
so I'm very sorry. So I was saying that probably what Daniel said was going exactly in the opposite direction. So telling to companies that they can use platforms for their own customers, but also for their internal processes, but also for R&D, but also for procurement, but also for HR, is actually increasing the level of confusion. So if you can do everything, understanding what to do and how to do it is actually very, very difficult. So the second part of the book is about that. So we try to put ourselves in the shoes of managers. So okay, now let's imagine I got this legacy company and I can do almost everything. Where should I start from? And we identified 5 main problems that these companies around the world are actually solving with platform thinking. Maybe they are not the only 5 problems, there might be more. But at least we've got these very 5 problems that managers can actually get in contact, relate with, so they can recognize them very easily. So just to give you an example, have you got any kind of transaction within the company or outside the company that is not working properly? So let's imagine, yes, I've got many transactions with my providers, but it's very sloppy. I got a central procurement and all the documentation and the things are very slow and so on. Another problem is, are your customer needs changing so fast that you cannot really follow them? And in many cases, you don't want to do it, because in some cases, what your customer are asking you is exactly your business. So you're a software company and they're acquiring for something new connected to software. But in some other cases, they might be asking for some innovation that is not really your core business. Do you have to develop everything internally? Probably not. You can rely on an external ecosystem. And at that point, the platform can be the answer for you. Let me just give you 5. We just give you the last one. We got many problems connected to data. A lot of companies, they've got huge quantities of data, and they are fully aware that they are not using all the value that is embedded into the data. And the reason is, in many cases, is because they are using it for the common customer. Opening the view, widening the way of looking at the world might help them in creating a platform, serving different customers and unlocking some of the value that is already in the data they have got. They don't even have to look for them. It's there. It's just not used. So we tried to identify specific cases of problems that managers can probably say, okay, I got this one. So let me see some cases of what other companies did. So the whole book is based on cases. So you're looking for somebody who did incredible things with data they already had. You got 3-4 stories about it. You might reconnect your own situation to one of those. So this is one possible way to start thinking about platform thinking. Is it the only one? Probably not. It is the best one. We hope so.
I love the aspect of data, because if we look at, for instance, Meta, but also Google and other companies who are really brilliant at managing, on one side, data, but also know how to use flywheels effect and platform mechanism, because they grew into that. The question I'm having is, platform thinking drives speed, but speed towards what? Have you encountered, you cannot speak for or answer for companies, but have you encountered the thinking of, yeah, we need to do it. Yes, we want to create flywheels and we want to use the platform mechanism, but there is an ethical thinking behind it.
We thought about it a lot. The public opinion when you talk about platforms tends to go towards the big, bad, ugly guys that are making a lot of money using our data. We are taking a different stance. Our perspective is, we are professors, we are methodologists. We do research, in this case, on how things work. And we love the mechanism. But how you use that mechanism is your responsibility as a manager, as a professional in this case. What do I mean? It's difficult to say data technology is good or bad. It depends on how you use it, why you use it, what's the purpose of using that.
Yeah.
And we truly believe the same for this type of value creation mechanism. You want to call it business model to make it easier. It is efficient. It is definitely more efficient than a traditional linear value chain where and when it can be used. That efficiency can also be transformed into effectiveness. So having a better service, a better product, a better match, a better whatever. But why you do that, it's your choice. You want to maximize profit and leverage the winner-take-all effect as much as you can, it's your choice. You want to use that for the good and for having an impact on society or on the environment, that's up to you as well. There are some companies that have it embedded, like I love Too Good To Go. That is one of the probably most successful European platforms. Is it for profit? Yes. But while having profits, is reducing food waste. So it's a good example to show that you can use the same mechanism for various purposes. Bringing this back in a legacy firm, I think the effect is twofold. On the one hand, I think that a legacy firm moving into a platform make the process of launching the platform much more efficient than for a startup. It's easier for a legacy firm to kick it off. Probably the probability of getting the new Airbnb like this is not that high. You are still bounded to a certain extent to your customer base, to your typical user profile and things like that. But the purpose why you do that, it's still up to you. It can be profit, it can be impact, it can be whatever. The case I was mentioning before is not even for profit. It has probably the aim to cover cost, but the aim is to have an impact on how companies can become more sustainable. And doing this for a platform is possible. Doing this with a linear value chain would require good fundings, probably.
Indeed, very, very interesting perspective, Daniel, especially creating value. And also a company, maybe you used also the word winner takes all. So they think about making a lot of profit. That also thinks me of like normally what you mentioned before, Tommaso, in platform thinking, you also speak about other companies which actually help you to innovate you, so you don't have to do it yourself. So it's more about partnerships over competition. At the same time, referring back to what Daniel said, there might be one company which actually owns the platform. In the platform thinking terminology is called normally the orchestrator. Who governs that party when it becomes too powerful? Are there means to do that?
Oh, so you're asking very difficult questions, Bob.
Sorry.
This is no. This is another of the questions we've been thinking a lot about. So first of all, there are at least two. So in many cases, there are books that we would have liked to write, and we didn't do it. So somebody else did before us. So there is a brilliant book by Lakhani Yanciti from Harvard Business School talking about hub companies and talking about how they can become so big that they actually have a huge impact on markets. And we see everyday examples of that. You see the impact that Airbnb has got on the real life of people into the cities, especially for over tourisms and so on. We see the impact that Amazon can have just by saying suggested by Amazon on a product and stuff like that. So the point you're talking about is very huge. And there is this other book that is called Cloud Empires by Ville from I think it's Helsinki, and this is about how cases in which these companies became so big that they started making decisions that are normally made by states and not by private-owned companies. So what's happening if you get to that point? So the problem is there on the table, and is very well known, and is a very huge one. And I think that the answer to this is incredibly complicated, because it's when they become so big, you can have probably two different possible approaches. The first one is the external regulation. So I still remember that when before the Clinton administration, they were talking about splitting Microsoft into operating system on the one side and Office on the other side because it was too big and so on. So this is something we can imagine, but it's very difficult because once they become so big and powerful, now there's a lot of discussion about, let's say that we split Google into parts, and Google will answer yes, but I will lose revenue streams. So it's more than okay for me. But if you split on the one side Google Maps and on the other one you put Gmail and so on, the result would be that I will be asked you money for these services because they are not for free anymore. And I'm not sure that the population will be in favor of that. So that idea of the external regulation, I understand that it makes sense, but I truly think it's not feasible at this stage. They are already too big, they are already too powerful, and they are already too much into our lives. So if tomorrow they say, okay, Gmail is not for free, there's going to be like a riot. It's like, okay. So what is the other alternative? The other alternative is probably to force these people to face the situation in which they are. So I will not make names here, but a few years ago, like 1 year and a half ago, there was somebody who said, I really would like, working on AI in that case, I really would like the state to put some rules to us. But I think that this is like a way to put your own responsibilities on somebody else. Technology is not good or bad, and I agree with it. But how you use technology, that has got an impact on what you do. And I truly think that these people, so the CEOs of these companies, they cannot really hide themselves saying that, but technology is neutral. Not technology, it is until you use it. And when you use it to create such a powerful empire, you're responsible for what you're doing. And we should probably be more hard in saying to these people, this answer is not acceptable. Because if we wait for external rulers, we will be always late. That in Europe, we are good with it. So with the AI Act and so on, but still, we arrive too late. Still, we are only covering a part of the world. That kind of approach is not working. I would work on the other side. And that's the reason why we focus a lot of our work with managers in making them understanding the responsibilities of what they're doing when they are developing platforms.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that your point is so valid, and maybe it's also for you the opportunity to work with a professor who is her origins are Italian, Mariana Muzzacato, and because she is working also. I see some alignments in how you could, with your expertise and her in-depth knowledge and working with governments, and to see how to move this topic. Because, at one point in time, we'll definitely have to look at it. However, though, there are many companies who are not there yet, and who are only looking for new ways on what is the next chapter of their company. can, because platform thinking unlocks so many ways, smarter, more adaptive business models. And it's not about just new delivery models, right? Can you expand on that, what you found out in your research?
Yeah, we found out that this is a complex question because we spend a lot of time reasoning on that. When Airbnb and Uber pop up to the big audience 10 years ago or so, with the beginning of the big hype of the platform revolution, there was this idea of making the Airbnb of whatever, the Uberization of whatsoever. And 10 years later, we are still talking about Uber and Airbnb. I think this is a good way of seeing that copy pasting the model. It's not the point. The point is finding a need, finding an idle asset, finding something that actually trigger it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was partially the idea behind the book. We open with 3 stories that talks about basically a new business model next to the original one, that is Siemens launching the Siemens Accelerator, AXA revising its own core product, launching AXA digital commercial platform that puts mitigation actions coming from external actors next to their typical product, while gathering data and information on how to let its own product to evolve in the future. And then we had OpenS with this process-based innovation looking at a support function as it is procurement. Then in the second part, there are these 5 problems that Tommaso mentioned before. And we have so many cases there, from Chipotle to Packard to Intuit and many others. But then we go to the third part. And the third part is, in my opinion, the one that Tommaso was mentioning it with the GPT. And he was mentioning our engineering-rooted culture, where we want to make things real. And the cards, the GPT, are a methodology that should drive managers and professionals in finding ways to use platform thinking. So my answer to you is, it can do a lot of things. We want to guide you on the things that make sense to solve with our platforms, which means that they benefit from some type of network externalities, and they benefit from multiple customers, multiple stakeholders on board. But then, the fact that you make it smarter, it's probably not because you pick a platform to solve it, but because you design a good platform to solve it. So we move it in the design space.
Thank you.
Also related to platform thinking and the strategies, it mentioned before also that it becomes more possible to scale up faster. You're more efficient. You can speed up things due to the fact that other companies can help you to innovate. You have a larger customer base, etc. But how do we make sure we actually scale value creation instead of value extraction, for instance?
In a certain way, we are lucky from this point of view, because we come from a background of innovation management. So since the beginning, everything we do, we try to look at how to real innovate something. And when it gets to platforms, and especially when it gets to platforms for legacy companies, they are normally accustomed to have a very linear value chain. So they, buy on the one side, they transform, and they sell to somebody else. And to unlock the platform mechanisms, what you need to do is to find at least a second customer. And the moment in which you got a second customer, you need to develop a value proposition for the second customer. So in a certain way, it is inherently connected. The value creation is inherently connected with a switch to a platform mechanism for established companies. Now, can we say that value extraction is not part of the game at all? Of course not. So there might be cases in which we will have, these mechanisms in order to scale very fast, in order to serve much more people without having the marginal cost growing that fast. And so you're even extracting more from the new customers and so on. Of course, this is part of the game. This is part of the reason why companies want to do that. But basically, in almost every case we analyzed, another customer was added. And in the moment in which it was added, there was a value proposition for them, it was a value creation for them. So in what we do, in what we normally do, it is almost automatic to see at least a part of value creation. How to do that is very interesting. And this connects back to what Daniel was saying. The ability to design services, that is a huge key. Because in many cases, the new customer you're serving is not the customer you've been serving for 100 years in some cases. So it's a new customer. And the moment in which it's a new customer, you need to look at them, to understand what are the pains, to understand how to solve the problem without creating new problems and so on. So that is where the real value creation is.
Thanks. You're on mute, Catherine. I don't know.
You're still on mute.
Do you want to continue with the next question? And let me ask before to the question to the audience. If you have questions, please, this is the moment to put them in the comments so that we can talk about and answer your questions. Thank you.
Thomas and Daniel, you have been studying more than 140 companies, legacy companies, basically. What is the most, that is for me very interesting, because this is basically transformation if you're from a linear value chain, go to platform thinking and a platform. So actually your workforce, you have to get along. What is the most unconventional thing you actually seen a legacy company do to fire up their people to support this transformation? And did it actually work?
This is a very cool question. We focused a lot on what these platforms do and a bit less on how they launch them for the type of data we gather. So we have a lot of information of what happened in Siemens, AXA, and Eni, a bit less on what actually happened in the other cases. So we studied what they've done more than how they've done it. Let me say, though, that I've recognized, generally speaking, Tommaso, maybe you have another view on that. So jump in if you have other cases. I found a huge difference from successful platforms launched by established firms and successful platforms launched by startups. So successful platforms launched by legacy firms are great projects managed by companies that are great in managing big strategic projects. So they are usually launched in a small scale, tested out, then enlarged with big announcements, big impact on the press, and the possibility to scale it up given certain constraints when they want it. While startups needs to be much more unconventional than that. When you said the question, I thought about BlaBlaCar, even though it's not a legacy firm. BlaBlaCar announced its existence the day of a big national strike in France, getting pages on the newspaper saying, we have the solution for you. That's unconventional. I believe legacy firms don't really need that unless they want to have something that is far from their brand, from their usual positioning. But this goes back, in my opinion, in the design space. So let's try to consider these projects as the special projects they are supposed to be. So also in this, you can have, you may have some certain type of creativity and unconventionality that could be put in place, even though it's not that needed as in other cases, maybe.
It's yeah. I mean, I would have said the same thing, but I mean, Tommaso, do you have another opinion?
No, it's not in our opinion, of course. There's one thing that I noticed, trying to creating platforms into legacy firms, and it is that there is a huge risk. So there's a huge opportunity, as Daniel said, because they've got these idle assets. They already got many things. For example, they can afford doing a project and wait for 6 months, 1 year before they see any kind of revenue. Of course, you cannot do that unless you are very well seated if you're a startup. But there is, on the other side, there is a sort of hidden risk that is not very hidden. So in many cases, we saw that becoming very evident. And the risk is that at a certain point, they push back a little bit. So we again, no names here, but there was this company, which is a legacy company, which decided to create a sort of marketplace. They already had a lot of customers for that specific kind of products. And they decided, instead of just providing the products that we normally do, to create a sort of marketplace and letting other people, some competitors, but also other kind of products to be sold for the same customers in order to fulfill all the needs of their customers, 360 degrees. And so they started it, they launched it, there was a lot of communication and so on. And at a certain point, they got scared. They said, so what's going to happen if the provider is not providing? So I got my customer, I love my customer. My customer is actually, putting a lot of trust in me. And what is now, let's say Bob's company is proposing a new product and they want to buy it and the product is not arriving, or it arrives late, or it's not provided in the right time, or it's broken when it arrives. And so what they did, they started to buy a lot of products by other people to put them into their own warehouses and then to deliver. So they went back to a huge linear value chain in which they exposed a lot of operating capital, and that was a disaster. So I don't go to the end, but believe me, that project was insanely expensive. That project is closed. So there is a huge risk of stepping back at a certain point because you are so much accustomed to see things in a certain way that you cannot really completely change your mind. So they wanted to do, but they couldn't until the end. So you need to be to have somebody very strong and to push very strong from outside.
That is a great point. I mean, it all comes with a mindset shift, unlearning to relearn, because it is so different. A different thinking. Fleur asked, do you see a difference for startups or incumbents when setting up a platform for B2B or B2B2C or B2C?
Yes. Yes, actually a huge difference. The differences are actually pros and cons in both ways. We got much more C-oriented platforms that became successful and famous, from Spotify to Airbnb to Uber to YouTube to the vast majority of them. There are B2B platforms born as startups, but I believe that the great pro there is the scale. A B2B platforms can be effective and potentially profitable even with a significantly lower number of users and transactions, because the fees are higher, the transacted value is usually directly higher. But getting started, it's more complicated because you need to convince a company. So the type of marketing can even be nicer to a certain extent. The conversion rate may even go better, but it's difficult. You need to convince an organization to jump on that. I think this translates pretty directly towards to legacy firms, but I believe that a B2B company is in a very good position to launch a beer-related platform. Look at what Eni did. They are already there, and a company is offering the chance to other companies to offer their services to other companies. The situation is it's definitely interesting. The difficulty there lies in the willingness to see the possibility of fostering innovation in a different way. Because if you are in a B2B field, in my opinion, this way of thinking is even more far from the status quo, from the usual thinking. Like in the C world, even if you don't want that, your industry has been upset by platforms, so you need to take that into account.
Can I just build a little bit on this? Because there is this other thing that Fleur was mentioning, and actually we saw many cases connected to it, that is B2B2C. So in many cases, what we saw is that established B2B companies can actually create a service for the final customer, helping their own customer. So there is always this struggle. If you go directly to the final customer, your direct customer of today might be worried because you can cut them out at a certain point. But what we saw were many cases in many different industries, going from Domino's in pizzas to healthcare, to CVS, and so on. And what they do, they actually recognize that the dealers are struggling a lot with developing big innovations, maybe connected to digitization and stuff like that. So you can help your customers to do better with their own customers. So you can have your business customers to do better with their C customers. And if you do that properly, this is working very well, because your normal customer will recognize that you are helping them. But on the other side, instead of having hundreds of different small-scale solutions, all of them do the same thing, all of them collect data in the same way, all of them offer the services in the same way, and you can have, as a father company, you can have all the benefits of all this data, all these standardized processes, and so on. So it seems to be quite common, if you find the right way to do, the smart way to do that, to go from B2B to C. And of course, this is only possible if you already are an established company. Because if you're starting as a startup, you don't have your B customers. So before starting thinking about your C customers or your B customers, that's a very long trip. So
that is terrific, because we spoke about the mindset shift at a few minutes earlier. And then now with this example that you're giving, I think it's, let me still ask you this question. What is one question or one comment or thought you would leave with every CEO, just for them to leap into the platform thinking, so that, CEOs are usually always on the rush, and so that they pause and think. What would you tell them?
Which are the apps that you use more frequently?
That is a good, yeah.
Now I might need more than the elevator speech to explain this to them, but I think as users we accepted the platform revolution 100%.
Mm-hmm.
But as users, many of them don't spend time wondering on what that means on that industry, on that field, and so on and so forth. And this could happen to the company of any CEO in the world. But I think this awareness is still not fully there.
Mm-hmm.
It's still something that is happening somewhere else. And you see it from many reactions. Now, think about the television industry. All the entertainment companies are launching platforms. Almost none of them are actually platforms in the business model and how they work. They are copy-pasting the result from the end user perspective, but they are not getting the model. And I think this is super common.
I think that this leads me now to the end of this webinar, but before, exactly to the point you were highlighting, the two of you are also offering something, a masterclass, right? To bring people, to show them what platform thinking means. Can you tell us more about that?
I go. Well, at the end of September, we are launching the first international edition of our professional certificate. It is a leading transformation through platform thinking, leading business transformation through platform thinking, which is going to be a 30 hours masterclass spread over 2 months, totally online, with great guests like you, the network folks, and many other people that actually made platform thinking happening. It's going to be interactive, highly interactive, and extremely practical. We will try to understand together what it means to apply platform thinking in different industries to solve different problems. You have all the links on platformthinking.eu. There is also the code from Value Department. The time to enroll is still there. We hope to see some of you there taking a bit of time to think about platforms with us.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I can only encourage, I mean, we've seen for sure the program in more depth, but because we spoke earlier about the shift of thinking, of taking decisions, taking account certain aspects which are different from linear process and or traditional business models. And it would be, how should I say, it would be sad, or we would lose the opportunity if we're moving onto a platform dynamic and thinking that that we still think the old way, the way we are used to. So it's a little bit pushing, us ourselves out of the comfort zone and discovering, I mean, new aspects, and especially with two lovely guys. And I mean, Bob and I, we would like really to thank you for your time. And we're looking forward to the further collaboration.
For sure. And I basically support all the thinking they have been doing. Please look at the book, Platform Thinking, as well as the new version, the Digital
Yes.
Phoenix Effect. Subscribe, have a look at the masterclass. Use their fantastic card set. Use ChatGPT to help you thinking and tricking the right questions, the right thinking. And of course, if you are required help, please reach out as well, because I think especially so we're willing to help you. It's all about collaboration and sharing the knowledge we have.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much.
And see you then all soon. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you.